That's right. It's May 23rd, 2024, Thursday, and I'm just now driving away from my school, Moore Square Middle, where I was able to enjoy my last day of school with my 8th graders that I've taught for 2 years now, and school is over. Summer is on, and to enjoy my first taste of freedom, I am enjoying the last few moments of me driving a vehicle on the right side of the street. Here we are going to RDU, my dad driving. Better him than me.
Tally-ho! Off to the land of haggis and whiskey, bagpipes and tartans, I see. Not that I know what any of those things are. What?
Feels good. The last time we were here for an Iceland Air flight, it was in June of 2021. So now back on with the masks and back over to Iceland, but a different overall destination.
While Braids tried to sleep or read, I watched in-flight movies. And may I say, I was quite productive. I watched Bombshell, Jumanji, The Next Level, Suicide Squad, and the first part of Aquaman. It's a 3,000-mile and 6-hour flight from Raleigh to Keflavik. Iceland is 4 hours ahead of North Carolina. At the gift shop of Keflavik's airport, while Braids bought some Icelandic chocolate and a sandwich, I got to wear a puffin and pose with the locals.
We got to Iceland the 24th of May, and technically it's 3 in the morning for our bodies, but it's 7 in the morning local time, and the sun is out, although you can't quite tell that from the weather.
Sure, Braids would have loved for us to stay put in Iceland, but we had another plane to catch. We got treated to much more space this flight.
Emergency seating means lots of legroom.
The 840-mile flight from Iceland to Glasgow took an hour and a half.
There it is, our first glimpses of Scotland.
Excited to arrive in the land of lochs and famous highlands. We took a bus ride to the train station thanks to Braids' meticulous planning. This was our first taste of travel on the left side of the road. Cool view from the second floor of this double-decker.
We might be on this to return our rental car,
We didn't stay long in the city the locals call the Deer Green Place.
We made it to Glasgow's train station.
Braids found us some seats on the train, and I slept out of exhaustion for most of the hour-long train ride. Our first impression of Old Reekie, or Edinburgh, was pleasant, as the Waverley train station is big and efficient. Edinburgh. It's got some history. The city has been the capital of Scotland since 1437. It's the most popular tourist destination in Scotland and the second most popular in the UK. It's also recently been titled the world's 15th happiest city in the world. The city grew out of a Roman fortification built in the 1st century AD, but many archaeologists say Edinburgh has had Neolithic people living there for 10,500 years. Sporting a castle, 4 universities, a zoo, a palace, and a royal mile, the city is old enough to be built on 2 levels, the old and new towns. No wonder Edinburgh is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Local Edinburgh time was 10:30 hours, but for our weary brains, it was 5:30 in the morning after some red-eye flights with only light napping. We were tired. As we took a walk from Waverley, it rained. We got our first taste of the streets of Edinburgh. Beautiful architecture. We found out our home rental, the Minto House, was one of 2 buildings at Edinburgh that went by that name. Ours was miles distance away. So we trekked to Victoria Street to dine at Birdie's. Not healthy, but man, did it taste good. Like only deep fried can.
And here we are for a late lunch, early dinner at Birdie's Fish and Chips. This, Braids tells me, is what they are known for, this recipe, although they have a lot more options here on the table. Did you know British customers eat some 382 million meals from fish and chip shops every year?
We were grateful to use their Wi-Fi to hail a cab. Braids gets all the credit for arranging the rides. Me, I'm the muscle. I get to tote the luggage.
This is so cool. I'm in the lift at Birdie's in order to transport this 50-pound luggage.
The city cab driver was a friendly guy.
Yeah, sort of a guest house. This is called Minto House.
He'd never been to America, but he was going to visit Washington State next year. The drive only took 4 minutes or so. We were glad not to be driving. We finally arrived. 123 Minto Street was a welcome sight. As Braids hopped in bed for a much-needed rest, I decided to walk the distance we just traveled by cab to pick up some victuals for the next day's Sabbath day. Off I go. You probably want to see that walk I took, and you will. But first, here's a little history of Edinburgh.
Let's go back, way back. According to some, this spot of ground was formed by a volcano 340 million years ago. For the next hundreds of millennia, 4,000 feet of glacial ice intermittently covered these Scottish mountains. Around 3,000 years ago, an Iron Age civilization began on one of these dead volcanoes, now called Castle Rock. By the 1st century AD, the local tribes had built a hill fort to keep the Romans at bay. This would become Edinburgh Castle by 1140 during the reign of King David I. The name Edinburgh goes back to at least the year 600, when it is mentioned in a Welsh poem. Scottish Parliament had been meeting in Edinburgh since 1235, but the city didn't become the capital of Scotland until King James I got murdered by assassins in the former capital of Perth. King James IV built Holyrood Palace in 1505, by which time he'd married Margaret Tudor, the sister of Henry VIII. John Knox started the Scottish Reformation here in Edinburgh in 1559. The Bank of Scotland was founded here in 1695. Throughout the 1700s, David Hume and Adam Smith made their philosophical mark in this city, and Scotland's Parliament ended its own existence by vote in 1707. But don't worry, because Scotland voted to bring its Parliament back in 1999 in Edinburgh. They still meet in this funky-looking building you'll see on day 2. Great Scott! For our first and longest Great Scott segment, we're taking a look at the richest writer in the world. J.K. Rowling is the first and only author to reach $1 billion. By 2004, she had eclipsed Queen Elizabeth II to become the richest woman in the UK. And in case you're a muggle living under a rock, J.K. Rowling wrote the Harry Potter books from 1997 to 2007. The 7-volume series sold over 600 million copies and has been translated into 84 languages. Joanne Rowling, not pronounced phonetically, was born on July 31st, 1965 in Bristol, England, not Scotland. She didn't move to Edinburgh until 1993. So if she's English by birth, why is she the first feature of our Great Scott segment, you may well ask? First, because J.K. Rowling has been deemed an honorary Scot by many locals. After all, she has been living in Edinburgh for 3 decades now and wrote her first novels in cafes and coffee shops and her last novel in the Balmoral Hotel. Second, because the places she envisioned in her Harry Potter world were based off real Scottish places. Victoria Street, for example, where we ate at Birdie's, inspired Diagon Alley. The Jacobite Express on the Glenfinnan Viaduct in Glencoe, which you will see on day 7, is the Hogwarts train seen in the movies. Other filming regions include Loch Arkaig, Clachaig Gully, and Stow Falls in Glencoe. In fact, the Wizarding School of Hogwarts is supposed to be located in the Scottish Highlands, protected from Muggles by a secret barrier. Every year, thousands of Potterheads visit Scotland to tour locations that inspired their favorite franchise. Visiting the graveyard of Greyfriars Kirkyard, they can find a tombstone belonging to Tom Riddle. George Heriot's school's architecture and its system dividing its students into 4 distinct houses provided the inspiration for Hogwarts. You can find so many J.K. Rowling wrote here plaques in Edinburgh cafes, you're likely to see some comic relief thrown in too. The K in her name, by the way, was added at the suggestion from her editor. It stands for Kathleen, her grandma's maiden name. The editor thought it best if Rowling went by initials so the target audience of young boys wouldn't know a woman had written the book. But how did she come up with the Harry Potter idea in the first place? On a delayed train, she conceived of the idea of a black-haired boy with glasses going off to a wizarding school. And when her mom, at the age of 45, died of multiple sclerosis, Rowling fell into a depression. After a failed marriage in Portugal, she moved to Edinburgh with her infant daughter and trained to be a teacher. While she frequented coffee shops, her baby sleeping at her side, she wrote her novel about Harry's first year at Hogwarts. It took her and her agent a year to find a publisher who would accept it. And then book sales took off. By 1998, the media's characterization of her as a penniless divorcee hitting the jackpot only improved her ratings. Since then, Harry Potter has become the most popular book series in the world. Not accounting for religious texts or government-mandated books, the first Harry Potter book is always on the top 10 lists of the world's most published books. And the seventh book, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, remains the fastest-selling book in world history, selling 2.65 million copies in the first 24 hours in the UK alone. In so many gift shops throughout our Scotland trip, we found a Harry Potter section of merchandise. J.K. Rowling has strong, often controversial opinions. She's been vocal about opposing Scottish independence and about Brexit. And throughout her books are themes of feminism, abolition from slavery, opposition to the idea of racial purity, and of course, witchcraft. This last theme is the reason one Tennessee evangelical pastor arranged a book burning that included torching Harry Potter novels. What's especially ironic is that J.K. Rowling identifies as Christian and claims to incorporate Christian themes into her stories. She has been a member of the Scottish Episcopal Church since at least 2012 and does not believe in witchcraft. She has had a difficult relationship with the press. Ever since June 2017, Rowling has been widely criticized for her questioning of recent transgender activism. She has poured hundreds of millions into charity that seeks to protect women and children. In 2005, Rowling co-founded the charity Lumos, dedicated to researching squalid conditions of orphanages worldwide and equipping struggling families so children do not need to be sent to these institutions. Rowling was inspired to start this nonprofit after she read about institutions in the Czech Republic that forced children to sleep in caged beds. And after Russia's invasion in 2022, Rowling offered to personally match up to £1 million in donations to Lumos for Ukraine. Whew! That was the first and longest Great Scott segment of the series. What's next, you wonder? How about our first Speaking Scottish segment?
I means yes.
Aye, it does.
Baltic frigidly cold.
Braids likes it here. She likes any place that's cold in the summer. The more Baltic, the better.
Kip, a nap.
I took a kip on the train.
Laddie, a boy or young man.
That's me.
Lassie, a girl or young woman. That's me.
This south side street, which is a long one, passing by a Lidl. I've just gone through 3 different grocery stores or mini marts, Sainsbury being the most recent. Now I'm off to the pie maker store, special orders from Braids to order for tomorrow's meals. And it really is true. Glasgow had a more industrial feel to it of what we saw, and this is much more mercantile. There's so many stores, restaurants, businesses just on this one street that I'm walking down for about a mile and a half.
This was in fact my worst day for food intake of this trip and of 2024 yet. Because of our red-eye flight and sleep deprivation, I preferred to eat nothing until my late afternoon meal of fish and chips, and then finish the day with 8 ice cream sandwiches, a pretzel, and a pretzel roll.
And you know, that was a lot of fun. Walking the streets of Edinburgh. I'm returning back to our place for the night. At last, the weary traveler gets to go to his bed at the end of a 26-hour cycle.
So that's our first day in Scotland. Our travels really get started on day 2, where we walk more than any other day of our trip to explore the National Museum of Scotland, to walk the Royal Mile, to tour the monuments, and to hike Arthur's Seat. It's a lot, but fun. Haste you back.